Hello, seekers of the pod. I am Crazy Joe Davola, and he is The Wiz, and together we make up the Van Buren Boys. Welcome to the Socially Awkwards podcast. If you haven't guessed it by now, today's episode is all about Seinfeld. From 1989 to 1998, Seinfeld made something special, starring Jerry Seinfeld, Jason Alexander, Michael Richards, and Julia Louis-Dreyfus. The characters of Jerry, George, Kramer, and Elaine, along with countless amazing guest stars, brought us through 9 seasons and 172 episodes. From the contest to the marine biologist to the soup Nazi, Seinfeld gave us spectacular laughter and a whole new vernacular. And today we're going to talk about all of it. Brandon, The Wiz, you have some thoughts on Seinfeld before we delve into it all.
I want to say I'm extremely excited to talk about this. Seinfeld is, I think it's the greatest sitcom of all time. And I think I don't want to say it's underrated because I think it's probably accurately rated because I think most people would agree that it's whether it's one of the best or the best, I think it's the best.
Yeah.
But I'm excited.
Yeah, it's great. I think it's got, I don't want to check right now, but I think it's got to be right around a 9 or above on IMDb as a whole. And then most of the episodes, I think it's hard to find an episode on IMDb that's under an 8. And I don't really pay attention to Rotten Tomatoes, but I'm sure it's high on Rotten Tomatoes as well. All right. Yeah. So what I want to start with today is I want to talk a little bit about what these guys were doing before Seinfeld, the 4 main characters. First of all, do you know anything about any movies that any of the 4 main characters did before they got to Seinfeld?
I know a little bit of previous stuff about 2 of the characters, but before that or beyond that, I don't know anything else. I know Seinfeld. I'll tell you what I do know. How about that? Because I'm really interested in what you're going to say.
Well, I don't want you to tell me what you don't know.
Right. Well, okay. So we'll start with what I do know then.
Okay.
Seinfeld, I know he was a stand-up comedian, really still is. I think he's still doing it. And the other person that knows, Michael Richards, I remember seeing clips of him doing like weird shtick kind of comedy on like late shows. I remember seeing some clips of him doing that kind of stuff. Jason Alexander and Julia, how is it pronounced?
Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
That's right.
Not related to Richard Dreyfuss, by the way, which I thought at one point a long time ago, and then I realized that they have their last names are spelled differently.
Yeah. That would be interesting though. That's the guy in Jaws, right?
Yeah, Richard Dreyfuss. Jaws and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, one of my favorite movies when I was a kid.
Yeah. And what about Bob?
Yes. Are we just talking about movies that Richard Dreyfuss was in now?
That's right.
Mr. Holland's Opus, which he won an Oscar for, I think. I think that was the only one he won an Oscar for. What About Bob used to be one of my mom's favorite movies. My mom's always liked Bill Murray, and she loved Bill Murray in that movie. And he is pretty funny in that movie.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
The first...
I was just going to say I don't know what they did.
Okay.
Go on.
So there's a horror movie, kind of a B movie type horror called Troll from 1986, kind of like a play off. I'm assuming, I don't know actually what was first, Leprechaun or Troll. Interesting enough, the first Leprechaun, Jennifer Aniston starred in from Friends. The first Troll movie, Julia Louis-Dreyfus starred in. And then there was another kind of a cult B movie called The Burning in 1981 that Jason Alexander starred in. And then Michael Richards starred in it was like a comedy called The House of God in 1981 as well. Jerry Seinfeld didn't make his movie debut until 1996's Eddie, which was Whoopi Goldberg, and he just played himself. And then, of course, we know he did the B movie, which is probably... It's pretty recognizable and it's a good movie. And then I don't know if you watched his latest, but it was about the Pop-Tart Wars back in the 50s and 60s or the 60s.
No, did you watch that?
I did, called Frosted. Bill Burr played JFK, and I thought it was great. Just the way he did the movie was he made it like it was the space race between us and Russia, but in this sense, it was between two companies, Post and Kellogg, I think. And I think I don't even remember which one actually came up with the Pop Tart, but they were both kind of working on it, and so it is a good movie. It's funny in its own way. Then, yeah, Jerry Seinfeld was obviously a stand-up comedian. He also played in a show, and I didn't write it down, and I should have. He played the mailman in the show that starred, I want to say it was Sidney Poitier that was in it, and Julia Louis-Dreyfus. First of all, Michael Richards was in Fridays, which was a variety show in the early '80s that was much like SNL, and he was in it with Larry David. And then 1984 to 1986, Julia Louis-Dreyfus was on SNL. At the time, she started at SNL when she was 21. So at the time, she was the youngest female to start there. I think there's been younger now, though. And she worked at SNL one of the years Larry David worked at SNL. I don't know if you remember the Seinfeld episode. This is a big story that's been around, though. If you remember the Seinfeld episode where George gets fired, it's early on, and I can't remember the place. And then he just goes back to work. Kramer tells him to just go back to work on Monday and act like he never got fired because he realized he needed the job. And
Did he get fired or did he quit?
sorry, he quit. You're right.
Oh yeah,
He made a big
yeah. Okay.
spectacle and he quit. And then he came
Yeah.
back acting like he never quit, and it worked. Well, that's based off of Larry David. David did that at SNL. He was getting fed up with his skits not getting on the air, so he made a big debacle and quit. He went home, and his real life neighbor Kramer told him, just act like you didn't quit. And he went in and he finished out the year at SNL. He only spent that 1 year, but it's just kind of funny that a lot of like the whole art imitating life thing, which happened a
Yeah.
lot on Seinfeld, because all of those stories came from some writers, or maybe it was Jerry, or maybe it was Larry. And yeah, so they're all kind of connected, except for Jason Alexander. Jason Alexander, he's done a lot of Broadway stuff. We talked about the early movie he did. Him and Julia Louis-Dreyfus. I don't know if you remember this movie because it was a box office bomb in the mid '90s, but it was a movie called North with Elijah Wood, where he's like a foster kid and he goes to all these different houses, like these different foster families, and it's different weird people. And his original parents, or maybe his original foster parents, were George and Elaine from Seinfeld. And so it was just kind of funny.
That's I didn't know that.
Yeah. And also, I want to give you some names of people that auditioned for George, Elaine, and Kramer that didn't make it. All right. So the most of the names that are on here are George Costanza. These are all the people that auditioned for George, besides Jason Alexander, of course. Paul Schaefer, Brad Hall, who, by the way, was also on SNL and is Julia Louis-Dreyfus' husband in real life for, I think, since the '80s. Larry Miller, Steve Buscemi. Could you imagine a Steve Buscemi? Great guy, great actor. I just can't see him as
Yeah.
George. Nathan Lane, David Allen Greer, Chris Rock, and the one who was actually offered the role but declined it, Danny DeVito. So just kind of
Danny could have been a good George. I
yeah,
think that
some
that could have
interesting
worked out.
things. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's I think nowadays, I don't know how often or how much, or even if you've watched It's Always Sunny, but it's really even hard to like even imagine Danny DeVito as anything else but his Always Sunny character, which is just crazy fucking madman basically on the show.
Yeah.
Elaine Bennis. So Patricia Heaton, do you know who Patricia Heaton is? She played, was it? Okay, I might be getting two Patricias. There's Patricia Heaton, who, if I remember correctly, was Ray Romano's wife on Everybody Loves Raymond, and then Rosie O'Donnell and Megan Mullally. Megan Mullally, she was the wife of, or not the wife. Well, she's the real life wife of Nick Offerman, but she played on Will and Grace as
Yeah.
the kind of flaky girl on Will and Grace. And then
Okay.
for Kramer, there's only two. Tony Shalhoub, a lot of people might remember him from Monk, and Larry Hankin, who's a name that probably people wouldn't really think about, but he's one of those classic character actors. And if you remember in season 4, when they're actually imitating real life again, where they're trying to get a show about nothing,
Yeah.
and he's cast as Kramer. And then there's an episode where Kramer is telling that Kramer that he's Kramer, and that guy's saying, no, he's Kramer. And it's just, it's the whole Seinfeld antics things. So those are just a few of the actors and actresses that tried out for Seinfeld. And obviously it went to, the other guys, but it's very interesting to hear about that sometimes, like when you find out like different actors that, we talked about it before, the Will Smith Neo thing from The Matrix, and how
Yeah.
your brain kind of goes, because it's always hard to know after the fact. Once you've seen the actor who's doing it, you're like, well, it's hard to see anybody else now. It's like the whole Back to the Future thing with Eric Stoltz, where they basically filmed the whole first movie with Eric Stoltz and then realized that he wasn't the guy and then went to Michael J. Fox. But just a lot of interesting things. I love that kind of shit, that stuff where you just find interesting facts about things. Seinfeld was kind of a slow riser the first few seasons. In a little bit, we're going to kind of get into the guts of it with the seasons and the episodes. But it was kind of a slow riser out the gate. I think the first couple of seasons were only 8 episodes. They were never guaranteed. They were constantly on the bubble. And then November 18th, 1992, The Contest was played throughout all of television homes, and that was the one where they could, for people who don't know, they could see, they were having contests to see who could go the longest without masturbating. And they never once said the word masturbate. They did such a good job. Like, I don't think they could at that time anyways. But that's another thing I want to talk about eventually, is certain things they did or said to get around the censors. And that, so it's just kind of interesting like that. But yeah, so the contest kind of started blowing it out of the water, let more people know about it. And then in February of 1993, they were put on Thursday nights after Cheers, and that was Cheers' last season. And then they just broke out to the point where they got so popular those last few months before Cheers ended that they replaced Cheers the following year at 8 o'clock on Thursday. And then the rest is history. And then ER came in and Friends came in. And then we had Must See Thursday, Must See TV. Is that what it was? Yeah. So it's just really crazy about that. But we are going to do a special segment really quick before we start breaking down things. And it's going to be, let me get some stuff situated here. I am going to, hold on. First, I have a brand new song for this special segment. So let's take a listen. Got ourselves a pop quiz. Yeah, a pop quiz. Do you know what it is? It's a pop quiz. Meow. All right. I don't know how the cat got in there at the end, but that's still good.
That coincided perfectly with a real cat that meowed behind you too. You probably won't be able to hear it in the video.
Yeah, I know. I
replay,
probably didn't even hear it.
Yeah,
So
I
this
heard
is
two
the
meows.
part where we do a pop quiz, and the quiz is based on popular culture. And since the episode today is about Seinfeld, we are of course going to do a little pop quiz of Seinfeld. And I
Okay.
think, do you want me to ask you some questions and see how good you can get them?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Let's see what I can get for you here. All right. Oh, this is going to be,
I didn't prep for this quiz, so
well,
we're
that's
gonna
the whole
see
point
how
of a
I.
pop quiz, I think. Well, no, I
Yeah.
mean, I guess in school you're supposed to know the answers. And that's why. And I apologize right away, because this is going to be probably harder, a little harder. I was trying to find one because a lot of ones that I found were like, what is Jerry's neighbor's name? And it's like, really? It's like, if it's kind of hard to find like that stuff. So this is a pop quiz of 10 questions. Um, let's see if you can get them. All right. Elaine once got a job editing her girlfriend's manuscript. What was that friend's name? A, Bethany. B, Cammy. What a weird name, Cammy. C, Rava. Or D, Liza. And I'm going to tell you that I had to look at the answer because I forgot this. So
Okay. What was the first one and the last one?
the names?
Yeah, the first name you said and the last name.
Bethany and Liza.
I don't know this, so I'm gonna go Liza.
The answer is Rava.
Rava?
Yeah, Rava's man or husband or boyfriend or whatever was the one who cleaned Jerry's apartment and then cleaned it out. I think this is early on in the show. And so he like stole all of Jerry's stuff. All right, so question number 2. Um God, I'm not even sure if I remember this one either. I remember the episode. What was the name of the air conditioner Kramer bought for Jerry? The Commando 8, the Commando 5, the Ultimate Cooler, or the Commando 1? And obviously, if you're on the same page with me on this, we could probably do this both because the answers are on the bottom and I haven't looked at this one yet. I
Okay.
know it's a Commando. I just don't know which one it is. I want to
Yeah, I
say
don't
8, but I don't know.
yeah, I was gonna say maybe 5. I don't know though.
5
I would have
sounded,
no idea.
yeah.
Maybe it's 8. 8 might be more funny though. They might have chosen 8 for the comedy
It is
factor.
8.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. So, all right, let's go
Commando
to
8.
the third one. Ooh. What is George's middle name?
George something Costanza.
George Costanza. This is
George
probably in only one episode.
is it no wait. Oh man. Is it like a name he doesn't like?
Probably. George
George.
Costanza. For a minute there, my brain was thinking about George Stephanopoulos, and I don't even know why. Yeah, I
I
don't
want to say it's
know.
like I keep saying something like Mariam or something like that.
Ooh.
Is it anything close to that?
Isn't that John Wayne's first name in real life?
I don't know. I don't know. But no, I'm thinking of the episode where he leaps
Lewis.
over the puddles. George Lewis Costanza. I didn't. Yeah, I forgot that.
Yeah. Okay, that does make sense. Now it does ring a bell. Wow, we're bad. Maybe we should have watched some Seinfeld before we did this. All right, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess this is a true or false. Elaine
Okay.
once dated a matador named Eduardo Carrascio. True or false? I'm going to say true. I think that name's
Yeah.
good for comedy and you want to say it.
Yeah. I'm gonna say true as well.
Eduardo Carrascio, if you want to tickle your mouth while you do it. I don't know what. It's false. So we were wrong.
Well, that's just a waste of everybody's time if
That
it's
was kind of a
false. Like,
waste.
yeah, you don't learn anything about Seinfeld, really. Okay. All right, keep going.
I already know this is so early on because I remember this episode. This is probably one of the first season episodes. In one episode of Seinfeld, Jerry meets a man on a plane who suffers from a heart attack. Jerry then agrees to watch the man's dog until he
Feifel.
is released from the hospital. What is the name of the dog? I know you're going to get it right, but let me.
I just said it, didn't I?
Would you say? I
Didn't I
think you
just
were a
say it?
little off, but but it's
Oh, is it not?
multiple choice. And so as soon as you hear it, you're going to get it because it says the
Okay.
name is
All right.
Jerry, Farfel, Smitty, or Adolf.
It's Farfel.
Yes,
Okay.
it is Farfel.
I thought it was Feifel. You know, he has an accent though, so he kind of says it like Farfel,
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
You know, so maybe my little boy ears heard Feifel. Okay. All right, I like that.
Gosh. Okay, here's the next one, and I have no idea. Maybe you've got recollection memory on this. Jerry allegedly doesn't like to drink anything with caffeine. However, in one episode, Elaine reveals to George that Jerry is unaware that his favorite tea has caffeine in it. What is the name of the tea? Spring Morning, Morning Thunder, Summer Breeze, Forest Rain. Gosh, I don't either. I feel like it's gonna have like a nice gentle name. So I'm gonna take out Morning Thunder, even though that's probably good for the joke because it's like he's drinking tea that he thinks is caffeine free and it's called Morning Thunder.
Yeah. What? Say the names again, real quick.
Spring Morning, Morning Thunder, Summer Breeze, or Forest Rain. These all could be great names for teas.
I'm gonna go with number 1 is my pick.
I'll pick number 2 for comedy's sake, but we tried that before with that one guy's name and it didn't work out. So
Yeah.
you've got Spring Morning, I've got Morning Thunder. The answer is Morning Thunder. And that's
There it
good.
is.
I think
Okay.
that's good for comedy. Like that would
Yeah.
be a nice paradox in the whole comedy world. Okay, so question number 7. Which of Jerry's girlfriends held a career having phone sex. Laura, Melanie, Sidra, Jane. The weird part about this is I can tell you the actress who played this, which is Jamie Gertz. Um, but gosh, I don't know because I remember this episode. It was also the same episode where Elaine couldn't spare a square, if you remember that.
I do remember that, yeah. And I remember, yeah, you can't spare a single square.
Right.
And she was gonna remember her.
Her name. Or no, her
Oh, yeah.
her
Yeah, yeah, Jerry had given, no, I think the laughter was related to the Pez. I
okay.
think, but
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
I remember that Jerry gave
Just gonna
Elaine,
remember her
like,
voice, I think, is what.
yeah, and so Jerry gave Elaine, like, gobs of chewing gum. He was like, "Your breath stinks.
Right.
Keep grabbing
Yeah.
some more chewing gum." And then when she met her, she had, like, 8 pieces of chewing gum in her mouth.
Yeah.
She was like, "Nice to meet you." So she couldn't get her, voice
And I
out.
think eventually, like at the end, she does realize it. And then Elaine goes and steals all the toilet paper in the bathroom because she sees that she's going towards the bathroom.
Yep.
But that doesn't help us with the name. It's Laura, Melanie, Sidra, or Jane.
It could be
Gosh,
any of the I don't I wanna say not Sydney, although I could be wrong with that too. It
Sidra.
could be any of those names. Sidra,
Yeah,
okay.
I remember I do remember a Sidra, but I'm assuming all four of these have been girls that characters that he dated in the show. Um,
Yeah.
I don't think it's. I'm gonna go with Melanie. What are you gonna go with?
I was gonna go Melanie as well, but I'm gonna switch it up and just go Jane.
So we can at least we have a 50% chance of being right.
Yeah, that's right. It's sort of like a lifeline, yeah.
It is Jane.
Alright.
Kramer was calling 900. It has a little factoid here. Kramer was calling 900 numbers and having phone sex with a woman
He
named
recognized her.
Erica. Yeah. And so her name on the phone sex line was Erica. When he heard Jerry's girlfriend Jane talk for the first time, he felt there was something familiar about her voice. Yeah, I do remember that. That was a pretty good episode.
Yeah, and she denied it to the point where the viewer thought that she wasn't, and then
Right.
at the very end, she turned to Kramer on the way out, and
Yeah,
she
like
used
I
the
think
voice.
Jerry and her were breaking up, maybe? I don't know. No.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
something
then
like
I
that.
remember, like, her turning to Kramer and, like, she said, like, "And I'll talk to you later," or something like that, kind of
Yeah,
in, like, a sexy voice or whatever, how she was doing
yeah.
it. Um, oh, I do remember this one. This is actually one of my favorite episodes. Jerry gets held up at a gunpoint to videotape a bootleg movie. What was the name of that movie? Cry Cry Again, Death Blow, Prognosis Negative, Ponce de Leon. I know it. Do you know it?
So, I do remember Prognosis Negative, but I thought that that was a movie in a different episode that they had went to see, and they were gloating about how the guy was falling out of the helicopter shooting back at it while somebody else was stuck seeing a different movie. I could be completely wrong, but, um, I don't know if that is the same. Okay, what's the second movie name that you said?
Death Blow.
Death Blow. So I'm gonna say Death Blow.
It is Death Blow. I'll check to
Okay.
make
All
sure,
right.
but it is Death Blow. That's the one where, yeah, Death Blow. It's one of my favorite ones because George becomes a bad man. Like, there's a girl that works for Elaine. This is when Elaine's running
Yeah.
the magazine with J. Peterman
Yeah.
gone, and so somehow like Elaine talks
He became the
George,
bad boy.
yeah, to the point where he's a bad boy, and so he's trying to live up to that hype. That's and then
Yeah.
and then yeah, and one of Kramer's friends is bootlegging a movie, but he eats too much candy, and then Jerry has to finish it. And I remember like Jerry and Kramer coming out of the movie, and Jerry being like, "I don't want to do this," and Kramer's just like, "Well, just get it done." And then they hear like a big crash, and then Kramer's like, "We're missing the death blow, man," and he's just, so yeah, it's one of
Yeah.
my favorite episodes. And then
Yep.
eventually in the end, George bootlegs the movie to try to because the girl realizes that he's actually not a bad man.
Yeah. Yeah, because Lane's like, George is a good man. He's a
Yeah,
good
on
person.
the
And he's like,
phone, and he's
no,
like, "Hang
no.
up the phone, Elaine.
Yeah.
Hang up the phone." Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And
I
then
remember
and then he
that.
gets arrested like at a sting operation. And then I
Yeah.
remember the last scene because George's dad comes down, and
Yeah.
Elaine's there with the girl and George in George's dad, Frank Costanza, played by the great Jerry Stiller, he's like, "Who put you up to this? Because my George isn't clever enough for a scheme like this." And then him and Elaine are about to get into a like she's like, "It was
Yeah.
me," and or something like that. And he's like, "Oh, you want a piece of me?" And then they get to fight. There is a blooper reel. I love Seinfeld blooper reels. So if anybody wants to go out there and have some laughs, there's a ton of them. But there's like a 5 or 6 minute blooper reel where Elaine cannot. She's usually the one that has problems getting through the scenes. She cannot get through it every time. George's dad says, "You want a piece of me? You got it." And then he's screaming, and it's
Yeah.
hilarious. Great episode.
I also love in that episode how Jerry, after getting positive feedback from the other movie, he starts getting really artistic about his
Yeah.
bootlegging.
He's like, "We're gonna need like
And he's
three
like,
cameras
we're gonna
here."
need guys over here,
Yeah.
guys over here. And yeah, and he gets into it, and then until he has this moment where he's like, "What the hell am I thinking?"
Right.
And then he's like, "I can't do it." Now, it might somehow fitting into this episode. Isn't there something about where the bootleg guy needs a video, so he like grabs? He's like, "Is this it?" And he grabs a tape,
This is the
but the tape at the
same
end.
one where Elaine dances. This
That's
is the
right. That's what I
whole
was thinking of.
reason why the one girl, like Elaine, thinks that the people at work are being weird because George went to the party with her. And George tells
Yeah,
Jerry, "Hey, have you ever seen Elaine dance?" And Jerry's like, "Oh my God, she danced." And one of the greatest Seinfeld lines ever, George says, is more like a full body dry heave.
yeah.
And then she uses the camera
Record herself.
to record herself, and she's doing like the thumbs that she does, and
Yep.
fabulous dance. But yeah, so just one of those episodes where everybody's got a great storyline and it all comes together at the end.
Yeah, really great episode.
Yeah. All right, number 9. What name does Kramer use for an alias in the Puerto Rican Day Parade episode? Now, the Puerto Rican Day Parade episode, if I remember, is literally the penultimate episode. I think it's the last one before the finale. Um, I remember that him and Jerry and George all end up in an apartment. It's like, I think somebody's got to use a bathroom. I don't know why the other people are there, but they all use different names. George has got a famous one that he always uses. Um, Kramer's, could it be a
Did
penny
he ever use it?
penny packer is in my brain.
Penny Packer.
And I
I know he had a. I remember he used a Dr. Van Nostrum
well, yeah,
a
that's
couple times.
when Elaine found out she was difficult in the and she kept getting written up in her doctor files for
Yeah,
being
and he's like,
difficult.
Dr. Van Nostrum.
Yeah, and then he's trying to get her file. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Penny Packer.
Penny
I'm a
packer
wealthy
sounds
industrialist.
familiar. Yeah.
Was he a wealthy industrialist or something like
Something
that?
like that.
Is that what he said?
This is not a
Yeah.
multiple choice. So, do you have any names? I guess I'm going to stick with
I
Penny
love.
Packer.
I, I love Penny Packer. I wonder if he'd used that before, or if that was the first time. But I do remember him using the name Penny Packer for
Right.
something.
All right, so you want to go with
And I
Penny
want to
Packer?
say, yeah, Penny Packer.
I'm all three of them use different names. I'm pretty sure George uses the one. I don't want to talk too much about his name that he uses because that's going to come up later. But
Okay.
but I'm pretty sure he uses the same one. And then Jerry actually uses one too, which he didn't really usually do. And I think that would have been a harder question because I have no idea.
Yeah.
And it is Pennypacker. Kramer needs to
Penny Packer.
use the bathroom, so he pretends to be interested in an apartment that is for sale. Later, Jerry, who's pretended to be Varnson, I would have never remembered that. And George,
Yeah.
who's pretending to be blank blank, because we'll talk about that later, meet Kramer,
Yeah.
Pennypacker in the apartment. They all pretend to be interested so they can watch a Met game. Okay, that's why, because they were in the traffic jam and they're trying to get to the Met game. All right. That's great. All right, so one more question. I know I already know the answer to this. And you might too. It says, how many different actors have played Morty, Jerry's father?
So at a minimum, it would be 2, but I don't know if there's a third that I'm not thinking of. And I can't think of a third, so just to be like intellectually honest, I think I just have to say 2. Although I wouldn't be surprised if it ended up being 3.
It
But I'm
is
gonna
two.
say 2.
It is two.
Okay.
And I will say that originally when I read this, I thought they were talking about George's father because a different person played George's father, and then um, Larry, Jerry Stiller came in and played,
Actually, I thought you meant Larry. Like Larry David didn't like the chemistry.
well, it's
I thought
really
that's
hard
where
for
you were
me
going with
because
that.
it's Jerry, Larry, and well, I guess it's just Jerry and Larry, right? So Jerry
Yeah.
Stiller, Jerry Seinfeld.
Yeah.
I was thinking that Jerry had a different first name for a minute, but yeah, okay. So I wasn't writing down how many we got or how many you got.
Yeah. I remember seeing all the interviews where they talked about his father, Frank, and the actor, they kept wanting him to play him a certain way, but Frank was like decided to like I forgot what the inspiration was, but he decided to play it mad instead
Yeah,
of being
like
like
yelling.
the
Yeah,
quiet one, whereas Estelle was the loud one. And then he started yelling, and then everybody loved it, and he just played into it, and that became the character. So
yeah.
I'm really glad
It's
that that's
such a
how.
great character.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're gonna talk about first of all, we are gonna talk about the seasons of Seinfeld. We're not going to go too in deep or in depth, but we are going to definitely discuss some of our favorite episodes. I know that a few days ago I had messaged you and said, "Hey, could you come up with your 5 best episodes?" And then like the day after I was like, "You know what? Scrap that because it's really hard." And here's what happened with me. I went on to the Seinfeld guide, this episode guide, and I went straight to season 9 because I was like, I like a lot of episodes in season 9. I picked like 11 episodes out in just season 9 and I was like, "Okay, this isn't going to work." Um because I'm going to have a hard time ranking these in the way to where I wouldn't
Yeah.
know if I could come up with number one, because there are so
Yeah.
many good ones. But so I don't know if like if you even got to it or not. But it was very difficult. Um, but we are. It's time for a little.
It's time for our fake sponsors. It's time for our fake
Thank
sponsors.
you,
Okay.
Dracula. We are fake sponsored by Top of the Muffin to you. Hate eating stumps? And no, we aren't trying to insinuate you're a cannibal eating war veterans. We mean muffin stumps. The worst part of the muffin. Come to Top of the Muffin to you to eat only the tops of the muffin. So come put your lips on a moist, gooey muffin today. Recommended by Ellen. We are also fake sponsored by Vandelay Industries, owned and operated by the prestigious short, stocky, bald man Art Vandelay. Vandelay Industries specializes in importing and exporting and architecture and marine biology. Marine biology and latex and that pesky Penske file. Vandelay Industries, one man's dream. All right. So
That's great.
those are some of our sponsors. I once got a job at Vandelay Industries. Um, as a latex salesman. And let
Okay.
me tell you, it is really hard to sell latex. Some people
Yeah.
just think it's only condoms. And it's like, no, it's used for other things. It's not just condoms or gloves. It's more than that.
Were you wearing your cotton boxer shorts
Yeah.
while you worked there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I ran out of the bathroom, was expecting a phone call, fell down. It was a whole thing. Then my roommate came in and was like, "So you want to be my latex salesman?" And just made me feel like shit. It was crazy. Um, we are going to move on to a segment called Word of the Day. Normally, this segment would be one of us would give each other a word that probably nobody's ever heard of that means something crazy or funny. But today, because it's Seinfeld, we are going to talk about some of the greatest things that Seinfeld gave us, and that's the vernacular. Seinfeld had so many different phrases, Brandon. I'm sure you remember. What is there? Are there any phrases right now that just pop into your head as I said that, as I'm saying this?
Oh, I mean, I don't know. I'm gonna forget a bunch. There's big ones. No soup for you. Um,
Well, I'm sure you're going to forget, but I just wanted to know, like, because I don't know them all either, but I just wanted to know what ones. One of the big ones that I always remember that I love and that I still say to myself sometimes when I feel like get myself worked up. Serenity now.
yeah. Serenity now. Insanity later.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always liked I was in the pool. That's a great one.
Yep. Shrinkage, the shrinkage
Yeah.
episode. Yeah.
Yeah. I was in the pool. Um, yeah. Uh, I want to say there was one that The Jackie, the lawyer, I want to say there was a line that he had there that he would say. You know what I'm talking about or no?
He probably has something, but I can't come up with it right now. The funny thing is
Yeah,
a couple of days ago I was thinking about him, not just randomly, but because we were preparing for this episode. And this whole time, up until 2 days ago, I thought his last name was Childs with a D at the end, Childs. And then I realized it was Childs, as in Chiles. And I was like, oh, I guess I fucked that up all these years. I always thought it was Childs. But yeah, so let's talk about some of the vernacular. Great word, by the way. I love the word vernacular. So if I keep saying it, that's why. Here's one that I like: anti-dentite. And that's what Kramer calls Jerry, because Jerry is talking bad. Who plays the dentist? Brandon?
Bryan Cranston.
Yes, he does. One of the great Bryan Cranston. So all you Breaking Bad fans out there, or maybe there's some Malcolm in the Middle fans, Bryan Cranston really he had other stuff going on, but he really kind of broke out as Tim Whatley on Seinfeld, and he was a pretty good character in himself. I almost had him in my top 5 characters. But so he's Tim Whatley in this episode where they mention the anti-dentite converts to Judaism and then starts telling Jerry a bunch of Jewish jokes. And Jerry thinks that the only reason why he converted was to say Jewish jokes. And so Jerry starts doing all these dentist jokes, right? Like, what do you call a doctor who can't get into medical school? A dentist, things like that, those kind of jokes. And then he tells that to Kramer, and Kramer's like, you know what you are? You're an anti-dentite. And it's a really good line. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Episode?
That
Okay.
was yeah, and obviously that's a play on the anti-Semite,
Right.
like the yeah, and yeah,
Which played well into the
Bryan Cranston
episode,
was
right? Because he
yeah
was converting to
of the
Judaism
Jewish,
for the
yeah.
joke. So it was
But he had both of them because he had he grew up, what did he grow up Catholic or something like
yeah, so
that?
he was doing both.
he
Yeah.
he was able to do all the jokes, yeah, and that didn't offend Jerry because he was Jewish. It offended him because he was a comedian. I remember that was a funny
Yeah,
part.
because he goes to talk to I think he's in like one of those confession booths, right? At a church.
Yeah, and they're like, and they
Yeah.
go, and this offends you because you're Jewish, and he's like, no, it offends me because I'm a comedian.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, that's a great one. Bro, which they're referring to a man's bra. Which, by the way, after I was talking about my jiggly man boobs, I may need a bro. But Kramer and George's father, Frank, if you remember, couldn't agree on a name. So Kramer was calling it the bro. And do you remember what Frank was calling it?
Man's ear.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's that famous I guess, clip of, I don't know. I think this is when George's parents were maybe separated, but George comes back to his dad's apartment with his mom because I think he's trying to get him back together. And then in that apartment at the same time, they're like listening to music, and Kramer's putting the bro / Manzier on Frank, and they walk in on that. And that's a great scene.
Yeah.
All right. Close talker. You remember the close talker?
I do, yeah.
Yep. Played by Judge Reinhold, for people that might not, or for maybe we got some 80s connoisseurs out there that remember Judge Reinhold. Yeah, so that's just basically a guy that, or anybody that talks to. So I think I've encountered a few close talkers in my life. Have you?
I certainly have before, yeah. I mean, I feel like it was mostly always older people, and it's not very common with younger people anymore, but I feel like I ran across older people that just seemed like they wanted to get way too close when they were talking.
I think the pandemic helped us realize that we don't have to be close to talk to people. We can just yell at you from 6 feet away and that's fine.
Exactly. Yeah.
Double dip.
You double dip the chip. It's like putting your whole mouth in the dip.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if if anybody out there listening didn't get that what that meant. It just means when you bite a chip or a cracker or whatever you're dipping, and then you dip that same cracker that you just bit again, basically with saliva down, right? Like the saliva part down. So it is
Yeah.
kind of gross to think about it, and I've always made sure that I don't do that if I'm sharing. If obviously if I got my own thing, I don't care. But
Yeah.
I just think it's funny, and I'm wondering if that was like the first time that was really used, or if people said double
Double
dip
dip.
before. But
Yeah.
because the
Double
lexicon,
dip.
like there was a lot of things that came out of Seinfeld, and like we use them. There's people that use stuff today that probably have no clue that it came out of it. Then there is a European carryall. Do you remember that?
I do. Seinfeld was just looking for something to carry more things, but he didn't know how to do it. And then I think it was Elaine that turned him on. Or no, was it Elaine or Kramer that turned him
I
on
can't
to the
remember
carry-all?
who got him that, but yeah, I do remember everybody calling it a purse.
Yeah. I remember him. There was a scene where he stops because somebody asked him for something, and he's digging through it, and he looks up and he's like, "I can never find anything in here."
Yeah.
And it's such a great moment, yeah, where he just accepts. He just is acting like it's a purse at that point.
Yeah. It's another good episode.
And then, of course, at the end, when the a burglar runs by and grabs it, and he's like, "Officer, he took my European carryall."
right.
And the guy's like, "You're what?" He doesn't really understand, and he's like, "My purse.
Right.
I have a purse."
Right. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
like, I think, the
Yeah.
last, the button to the episode.
Yeah.
And then we're getting close to this. I think this falls on the 23rd of December. Festivus,
A Festivus for the rest of
the
us.
wonderful
Yes.
holiday that was made up by George's father. Also, this is based on a real life thing. There was a writer's parents that had a Festivus. They did not have the pole, but they did have like I think they had the feats of strength. And like I think what is George's father says, we gather around and we talk about how everybody's disappointed each other in the whole year or something like
Yeah,
that.
I want to say something like an air of grievances or something like that.
Yes. So
Yeah.
that was all based on a real thing. And then now there are actual people. Now it's actually on the calendar, right? Like Festivus is actually a thing and people follow it. But yeah, it's just kind of funny. And it's always cool to just get up on Facebook I think it's December 23rd, and just say, it's a Festivus for the rest of us, and see how many people actually, if people, you put that as your status, and anybody that likes it, they're your friends for life. If people don't know what it is,
Yeah.
get the hell out.
Yeah, they're done.
Yeah.
Cut them out.
All right, then we have man hands. You remember man hands?
Yeah, she had man hands.
Yeah, and
that was his reason.
what was the thing at the restaurant that she was just breaking with her hands?
It was like lobster.
Yes,
It was like lobster. She was just manhandling.
Yes.
You know, as we talk about this, I'm starting to realize, because there's a modern concept that people talk about. It's something called the ick, and I almost feel like the idea of the ick originated in Seinfeld, like, because that's where I remember it was pop. You know, like she eats her peas one at a time.
Yeah.
You know, she has man hands,
Right.
and then
The
that was
littlest
that
things,
to me.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, that to me is the original ick. It's when somebody does one thing that completely changes your perception of their attraction.
Right.
And now they call it the ick nowadays, and all the Gen Z, whatever. But I feel like that was the real beginning of the ick.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you don't. Yeah, it is crazy. And that's probably one of the things that made the show so funny was and it was usually Jerry. Well, I guess it was all of them, right? Like they all had, except for Kramer. Kramer really didn't have issues with any of his girlfriends. Although out of all four characters, I feel like he's probably had the least amount of significant others on the show. But everybody always had.
There was
some problem.
I remember. Yeah, I remember one that Kramer had issue with, where he had to. Her name was Olive, and she would scratch his back with these really long nails, and he loved it. And but there was something about her that he had to get rid of her, and I forgot why it was, but he ended up using the that was the same episode where there was a mannequin that looked like Elaine, I think, and he had it in the car, and he went out and he
Right.
made out with the mannequin while Olive was looking at the window
Yeah.
from the diner. Yeah.
Yeah, and like Elaine, like the mannequin of Elaine's arm like pops off.
Yeah, it pops off
Yeah.
and he's like, "Whoa."
Olive,
Yeah.
man. All lives matter. All right. Then we have the regifter, which I think most people should know what that is. That's just like if somebody gives you a gift and then you actually use that as a gift for somebody else. And that was also that was another episode with Mr. Bryan Cranston with Tim Watley. Elaine accuses Tim Watley of being a regifter after he gives Jerry the same type of label maker she gave Tim for Christmas in the label maker. Yeah, another great stuff. Ribbon Bully, which is probably a little bit less known. But that one had to do with
Is this with
the AIDS
the
walk.
AIDS walk? Yeah, and Kramer
Kramer
he doesn't
wouldn't
want to
wear
wear
the
the
ribbon.
ribbon.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to wear the ribbon.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the guy was upset. And he got the crowd beat down, right? Because he wasn't wearing the ribbon.
Yeah. Yeah. Because Kramer was always a little bit rebellious, right? Like if you had to explain his character, he was wild, he was wacky, and he was rebellious. And then and a lot of the stuff that he did, from what I've read and from footage I've seen, was a lot of the same stuff that the original Kramer, Larry David's neighbor, also did. The next one is we've already talked about a little bit, Shrinkage, where obviously, you know, I was in the pool. And if for any females that don't know, when men get into cold water, it likes to shrink up a little bit, if you get my drift. Spongeworthy. This is I had no idea what the sponge was until I watched this episode, by the way. And then even then I couldn't look it up because we didn't have
Spongeworthy?
Wikipedia, yeah, and things like that. I didn't know. And then I think I had to ask my mom, and she was like, "Yeah, that was just a form of contraception." And
Oh yeah.
so, but I remember that was the only form that Elaine used, and then she realized they were uh phasing it out, like, yeah,
Discontinuing.
discontinuing
Yeah.
it. And so she finds a place that has a bunch, and so she just buys all the sponges. And then she's like, now, because she has a limited amount of sponges, she's like really reevaluating like who she's going to sleep with and when she's going to sleep with them. And it's kind of funny. Two-Face, and no, we're not talking about a Batman villain. But if you remember, do you remember Two-Face? um the girl that
You have to
Jerry
remind me.
dating,
Yeah, I
and
remember
she
that.
looks
Yeah.
different in the light, and then when she's not in the light.
Yep. And he wanted to sit with her in the back, like of the restaurant, because that's where the lighting was good. And they met. That was one where didn't Tim Watley make another appearance in that episode?
Yeah, because he's
Yeah.
at some gathering, and there's a blooper reel with
Yeah.
this too. But because every time, because she comes in as the version he doesn't like, right? Like there's bad lighting in there,
Yeah.
and she looks different, and then he kind of looks at Tim Watley, and he's kind of like, "Huh," and he keeps making these weird noises.
Now, why were they all at? They were all at Frank's house at the end, weren't they?
For that show,
For Two-Face, because isn't there something where she breaks up with them and he goes to follow her? Wait, he goes to the porch and he's like,
that's the Festivus episode. It's the same one.
so
It's the same one where I just did a fake sponsor for, but Elaine. Oh no, it's not the top of the muffin to you. Elaine. Oh, Kramer goes back to work. Remember, he like the strike ends after like.
it's funny that there's so much that can happen in an
Right.
episode
It's
that
so
it feels like different
yeah,
episodes.
So he goes back to work, and then Elaine, she gets like, I don't know, like somehow like steam starts coming out of the vents or something at the place, and her hair gets all fucked up.
But
And then
she's sitting in
so
a schwitz.
right,
Yeah.
and then Kramer is the one that tells Jerry's girlfriend that she's like, oh no, like he's the one that gives it up, and so she thinks that he's cheating on her with Elaine when really he just means that she's a different version. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot into that episode.
Yeah, and I love just to go back to the Festivus thing, because it just remind me real quick, where Kramer is all for, he's like one of the reasons why Festivus is happening that year.
Right.
And then at the end, I remember him hitting George and going like, "I'm sorry, George, but he's like, this is a little out there."
Yeah. It's a
He's
little
talking about
wacky.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little wacky.
Yeah. Another great
And he's like,
blooper, that whole scene
Yeah.
at the table. If anybody wants to check out those bloopers, especially when Kramer gets up and does that, a lot of people, like, they all just crack up. All right, and then our final term, there's probably many more that we could talk about, but yada yada yada, which is I still hear a lot of people use now. And that's just when you want to skim over the important details of a conversation.
Yada yada over the best part. Yeah, we went out, we had a couple drinks, went back to my place. Yada yada yada.
But she had the lobster bisque, remember? And then he's like, "You yada yada over the best part," and she's like, "No, I mentioned the bisque."
Yeah,
And that was kind of like the
Yeah.
funny part about it. All right, so that was our word of the day.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, I almost did it again. All right, now we're gonna get into the thick of it. We're gonna start discussing some of these episodes, and we've talked about quite a few already as we've gone through this. But is there anything that really is there? I mean, I know we said it was hard to pick out favorite episodes, but are there any episodes out there that really stand out to you?
I think some of the ones we've already mentioned do. Obviously, like the Festivus episode, because there's so much packed into that. So many like plot lines. There's one that I have a friend, one of my friends and I, we joke about this all the time. For some reason, it sticks out to us. But it's his mother was a mutter. You know what I'm talking
I
about?
do, but I don't remember what
Um,
episode that was from.
yeah, I don't remember the whole episode, but it had to do with I think that Kramer has a gambling problem, and he but then he gets a tip when somebody's like, "Oh, she loves the slop," and he's like, and the guys, they're talking about this horse, and she's like, she's a mutter, and she's like, "Mutter is father was a mother," and he goes, "Father was a mother," and he's like, "His mother was a mutter." He goes, "Mother was a mother," and he goes, "What did I just say?" I think I said that right. I might have messed. I think I botched that, but um, I love that. And then Kramer goes and he's like, and I think he wins that, but then he's gloating too much about the win at the very end, and like somebody's following him
It's
because
called.
he's got
It
like
is
this
from a 1992 episode called "The Subway."
the subway.
His mother was a mutter is misremembered as often parodied line from the TV show Seinfeld, where Cosmo Kramer says his father was a mutter, his mother was a mutter. And then in horse racing, a mutter is a horse that performs well on muddy or wet racetracks.
Loves the slop.
Yeah, and this is also a nod to an Abbott and Costello routine. Um, so very interesting. Yeah, I mean, any more? Like we can. Well, let's do this. Um, the first season of Seinfeld only had 5 episodes. It had the original name of the show was actually called the Seinfeld Chronicles. I don't know if you knew that. Um, that was the pilot. Elaine is not in the pilot. Originally, they were going to have the waitress be part of the show, but I think the notes that came back said, no, you've got to come up with a better, like a female lead, and then that's when they brought Julia in. The second episode is the stakeout. The third episode is the robbery. The fourth episode is the mail on bonding. The fifth episode is the stock tip. I don't usually when I talk about Seinfeld, I do say that like the first couple of seasons are rough for me. In fact, if I were to go re-watch Seinfeld, I'd probably start season 3 because that's usually when it like kicked off for me. Some of these early episodes, if you watch them, they're good, but I do wonder how it
Yeah.
made those 2 seasons before it started getting good.
And the pacing is a little bit, it is a little bit more awkwardness. Their characters are not quite as well defined, right? So it's like sometimes the way they're being played is a little bit odd. Um, and yeah, and you have the older, like the father figures that are using the older actors, the previous actors.
Yeah, and I believe that Jason Alexander originally went in doing like a Woody Allen impression, and it took him a while. So in the early episodes, he's kind of doing a little bit of a Woody Allen, and it took him a while to realize that he was Larry David. And then once he realized he was Larry David, he kind of changed that up, and that kind of, I think, took notice too, like from fans and stuff. Season 2, you have the ex-girlfriend, the pony remark, the jacket, the phone message, the apartment, the statue, the revenge, the heart attack, the deal, the baby shower, the Chinese restaurant, and the busboy. Now, I'm going to tell you right now that the last two I remember more than any of the other ones. The Chinese restaurant is kind of famous. It did not have Michael Richards in it. It was just Jerry, George, and Elaine literally waiting for 22 minutes in a Chinese restaurant to get seated with basically nothing happening. I remember Larry David talking about this and saying that when he pitched this episode, the execs at NBC were like, nothing is happening. And he really had to push to get this on.
Yeah.
But it's a unique episode. Um, any of those episodes that I mentioned stand
Yeah,
out to you?
I can remember. I want to make a mention when you said the statue. Is that the one where is it like somebody thinks that the statue's missing? Maybe Jerry. Um, Kramer. Is this another one where Kramer goes undercover to like try to retrieve the statue, and he acts as a cop, and he's
He
like, "You're in
might.
big
It's
trouble. You're gonna be in
not.
big trouble."
I don't see it in the description, but it's a pretty short description. As the seasons go on, these
Okay.
descriptions get longer. But it says Elaine persuades Jerry to hire a friend's boyfriend to clean his apartment. When Jerry realizes that, I do remember this one. When Jerry realizes
Yeah,
that
this is it.
a statue once owned by his grandfather is missing, he suspects the boyfriend. A confrontation could affect Elaine's working relationship with the housekeeper's girlfriend. And that's all it says for
Yep.
that. But yeah,
That is the one. And Kramer goes undercover. Kramer acts like he's a cop and goes to the guy's apartment
yeah.
and makes the guy lean up against the wall. And he makes him, he's like, look the other way. And he makes him look the other way. And then Kramer's like, you're going to be in big trouble. And then he's looking and he finds the statue and he sticks it in his duffel bag. And he's like, and then I don't know what he says, like something like, you got off lucky today. And then he goes out of the apartment. And then I think what happens is right at the end, Seinfeld realizes that, Jerry realizes that he does have the statue. So now he just stole that guy's statue.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just the misunderstandings type thing.
But I'm wondering what the name that Kramer used, though, because I know we have Pennypacker, we have Dr. Van Nostrum. I'm
Yeah.
wondering if he used a name as that cop.
Yeah. I'm not
Does
sure.
that ring a bell?
I don't know if he just did his regular name. Let's find out if we can get any information on this.
Yeah.
Okay. He uses Kramer. So he uses Kramer as his cop name.
Okay. Bold. Yeah.
Yeah. Still early on, and even then Kramer wasn't fully Kramer, right? Like that he was still getting into the character. I'm not even sure when he started doing the crazy entrances into Jerry's apartment, and then everybody started reacting to those. All right, so let's take a look at season 3. We've got the notes, the truth, the pen. I remember the pen. Um, the dog, which is we just had to answer that, right? Farfel. The library, which oh gosh, who's that guy's name? The actor that plays the library cop that was on Law and Order.
Oh, that's a great episode. Yeah,
Yeah, and
because
he does such a great job. Um, yeah, go ahead. What were you gonna say about that?
is that the one where George takes a book into the bathroom?
That is a different one. That's a later episode.
Okay.
This is the
So
one
the
where Jerry
library,
is informed by the library that he has an overdue book from 1971, which so it would have been 20 years at this point because this episode aired in 1991.
yeah. But that library, there's like a library cop that shows up at his apartment
Yeah.
asking him questions, and he is really like a hard-boiled detective kind of
Yeah,
person.
he
the ways-
belongs.
Yeah, it's a really great monologue. I remember that the detective has in his apartment.
Right.
Yeah, really great.
Okay, and then the next episode is the parking garage, where they spend the whole time in the parking garage. They're trying to find out where they park the car. George gets arrested for urinating in public. And a fun part about that one, from what I've learned, is that at the end of that episode, the car was actually supposed to start. But in the end, it didn't start, and they just liked that ending better, so they used it.
Yeah.
So that was kind of fun. Then there's the cafe. That's the one where you meet Babu for the first time, where Jerry goes and visits the Pakistani owner Babu and tries to give him some advice, but then it doesn't work out for Babu. And that's not the same one, but later on, there's one where Babu gets deported, right? Because Jerry was supposed to give him his immigration papers.
He's a very, very bad man.
Yeah, he's a very,
right?
very bad. Jerry's a very, very, very bad man.
Yeah.
All right, and then you have the tape. I remember a lot of this one. Kramer tries to record signs of growth with his new video camera. George is excited about a new potential baldness cure that is discovered in China. Okay, and this is the one where I do remember this one, where Jerry finds a tape recorder and finds a sexy voice in it and wants to know who recorded in it, and it ends up being Elaine.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. There's the nose job. I do remember the nose job. That's where Jerry's girlfriend, or sorry, that was George's girlfriend. And Kramer, being the kind of guy he does and just says it how it is. The girl was talking about how she didn't like her nose, and Kramer said, "Oh, I can just get a nose job." And George was trying to get her to get a nose job, but didn't know how to ask her. So she goes to get a nose job, and then what happens, Brandon? After she
Does
gets
it
the nose
get
job and
botched?
gets better. No, it's fine, but she ends up leaving George. So because
Yeah. But wasn't it? Yeah, I remember there was something about like he didn't know how to say anything at first.
right,
Wasn't Kramer the one that was like
yeah, he's like he was the one. Oh,
immediately
you
was
just
like,
need a nose job.
yeah,
Straight
you just
to
need a
her,
nose
yeah,
job.
yeah.
Yeah.
Then we have The Stranded. I haven't watched this one in a long. This one I don't remember a lot of. Jerry and Elaine go to a party with George. While there, they send signals to each other to get out of a bad party conversations. Jerry and Elaine are left without a ride home when George gets lucky at the party. The party's host, who stayed up with the pair during their wait, shows up at Jerry's apartment and gets drunk with Kramer. Later, George pays the price for his romance in the workplace, and I think that's the one where he has sex with the cleaning lady, if I remember right. And then George's
Yeah.
plan to get revenge on a drugstore clerk backfires when he is caught shoplifting.
I like that one because there's a moment where George his plan to get out of being in trouble for doing that is to say that he didn't realize it was frowned upon to do that
Yeah.
in the workplace.
He's like, was that
Yeah.
bad? Should I have
Is that
not
bad?
done that? Yeah.
Because I got to tell you,
Then we have the alternate side. This is the one where George parks cars for Sid, who I don't think is much of a character other than this one. Sid is the older gentleman that parks cars, and he's got to go away or do something, and so he has George do it, but George realizes that it's a lot bigger job than he entails it to be. And then Elaine has an older boyfriend that suffers a stroke on Jerry's couch. And then Kramer gets a line in a Woody Allen film. These pretzels are making me thirsty.
oh, that's a line, isn't it?
Yeah. So yeah, that's that one. And then the red dot. I do remember that, where the sweater. Yep. That and Jerry. Yeah. So Jerry unwittingly causes Elaine's boyfriend to fall off the wagon, so he gets drunk. And then George buys a sweater. Oh no, George presents the gift to Elaine. He hopes she will not notice the red dot, and then the drunk guy later on points out the red dot. And then there's the subway. George, Elaine, Jerry, and Kramer each take the subway. Jerry befriends a fat naked man, with whom he spends the day at Coney Island, if you remember that one. By the way, that fat naked man, for anybody out there, I don't know the actor's name. Anybody out there, he played Carosi, which was a boss at a beach club for 8 episodes on Saved by the Bell, when all of those guys worked at a beach club, because Saved by the Bell had some weird shit going on. George meets a beautiful con artist who takes him to a hotel, chains him to the bed, and robs him. I remember that. And Kramer overhears a tip on a sure bet at the races and wins $18,000 and is chased by a shady figure. And I'm just going to keep reading these off, but if there's something you want to say, I know once we get to the later one, there's going to be a lot more to say. But if there's something you want to say, just go ahead and interrupt me. We're going to go to the Pez dispenser. This is the one where they're laughing, right? Because Jerry
Yes.
brings a Pez dispenser to a piano concert where George's girlfriend is performing, and he keeps distracting Elaine, and Elaine's laughing. So they're trying to make sure that, or George is trying to make sure that Elaine doesn't laugh around her, so she doesn't know it was his friends, because she gets kind of distracted from this. And George decides to break up with her before she can end the relationship because he always wants to take the high road, right? He always wants to be
He wants hand is what he
right.
wants.
Yes, that's right. He
Yeah.
wants hand, and
He
he
wants
didn't have hand. He
hand.
wanted the upper hand, but he didn't have that hand.
Yeah. Yeah, and at the end he says, "Oh, you can't do this because I have hand."
Yeah,
And then she says,
you're gonna need it. Or is that
"Yes."
what she
Yeah.
says? Yeah, good
Yeah,
because you're gonna
and you're
need
gonna
it.
need it.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So the next episode is the suicide. Martin, Jerry's neighbor, tries to kill himself when he thinks his girlfriend Gina is coming on to Jerry while Martin is hospitalized. I do remember this because he was like a big guy. Gina does make a pass at Jerry. George is warned by a fortune teller of impending doom, fearing the worst. George gives his ticket to the Cayman Islands to Kramer. Elaine needs to fast before an X-ray. Is that a normal thing? Fasting before an X-ray? So she tries stuffing herself 3 days before the test. Jerry becomes worried when Newman, um, and I think this is the first time Newman comes in, who's a friend of Martin, sees him with Gina. Yeah, so just another episode there. The Fix Up. Elaine and Jerry arrange a blind date. Elaine and Jerry arrange a blind date between George and Elaine's friend Cynthia. I do remember this. Expecting it to be a complete failure, they agree to tell each other everything they hear about the date. Tensions rise when they discover that they're each withholding information from the other. There also may be a problem with a defective condom. My boys can swim.
My boys can swim. And it impresses her because George called her up right afterwards and said that he basically says, no matter what, I'll be there for you.
Yes.
And I'll support you, whatever decision you make.
Total
And
not
that really,
like George at all, yeah.
And it totally impressed her. And then they were going to go on another date. But then on the second date, she got the ick because he was eating like just a mongrel over the plate, just shoveling food into his mouth. Yeah.
And then she had the one, so she had like that ick factor, right? So yeah.
Yes. Yep. That was the ick.
And then the next one is a two-parter. It's called The Boyfriend. It's the one that involves Keith Hernandez, the baseball player, where Jerry helps Keith move, and then Jerry is kind of jealous because Elaine and Keith like get together and they have like a weekend. They like she steals Jerry and Keith's weekend plans. So there's kind of like a jealousy right there. Also, they do a take on the JFK film or the Magruder film where they show John F. Kennedy getting shot. Not in this, but in that original film, they show JFK getting shot. This one talks about Newman and Kramer when they got, or maybe Hernandez. They were allegedly spit on by him. Okay, so yeah, they think that he was spit on him.
Yeah.
And then so they do
the
this
magic spit. Yeah.
Yeah, like the
And
magic
it goes
bullet theory.
back.
Right.
It goes back into the left.
Yeah. Which was
Back into
straight
the left.
from that JFK movie that was released that year with Kevin Costner.
Yeah.
So that's a great one. Yeah, it's a good one all around. And then the limo.
That is one magic loogie.
Right. And then
Anyways,
the
go on.
limo, I don't know if you remember this one. George's car breaks down on his way to the airport to pick up Jerry. George pretends to be a delayed passenger in order to get a ride in his limousine. While taking the limo, they call Lane and Kramer to join them for an event at Madison Square Garden. When they pick up other people, George and Jerry realize that they are on their way to a Nazi rally, and George is the main speaker.
Yep. And his name, I can almost think of his name too.
O'Reilly. No, O'Reilly? I think
O'Reilly.
it is O'Reilly. Or it's something, it's O something, I think. I think it's
Yeah,
Irish.
you're right. Yeah, it's something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I forget, but yeah, you're close. Yeah. Or if that's not it, yeah.
Right.
It's O'Reilly.
And then it's the,
Yeah.
now I'm just thinking of O'Reilly's Auto Parts. I got that song stuck in my head. Um, Then we have the Good Samaritan. Jerry sees a hit and run accident and catches up with a fugitive driver who happens to be an attractive redhead. And so he takes her out on a date. When Jerry discovers that the woman she hit is a beautiful blonde, he feels torn. He tries to act as a mediator between the two men with disastrous results. George has an affair with Elaine's friend. Kramer has violent reactions to Mary Hart's voice. I do remember that one a little bit.
Yeah. By the way, I looked it up. It's O'Brien.
O'Brien. That's right. Yeah.
O'Brien.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
He had wrote a book, right? He was like a neo-Nazi or something. Yeah.
Yep.
All right, and then we have the letter. Jerry's dating an artist who is painting a portrait of Kramer. I do remember this. When she gives Elaine, George, and Kramer tickets to a Yankee game, Elaine lies to her boss to avoid going to his son's circumcision. They get ejected from the seats in the owner's box because Elaine refuses to take off her Orioles cap. A photograph of the incident appears in the paper, and Elaine is afraid that her boss will see it. Jerry finds out his new girlfriend is a plagiarist, and he hears the words she wrote in a letter on television. I think it was from like a commercial or something. I don't remember. Or maybe it was an old show. But then we have the parking space. George has a day long argument with Kramer's friend Mike over a great parking spot in front of Jerry's building. Elaine, Jerry, Newman, police, and passersby argue over proper parking technique. Jerry is skeptical of Elaine's explanation of why it is not her fault that his car was damaged. And Kramer tells Jerry about something his friend Mike said about Jerry being a phony. That one comes up later on. That whole phony thing is a little bit of foreshadowing. And then the final episode of season 3 is The Keys, the season finale, where Jerry takes away his spare set of keys from Kramer after he abuses his entrance privileges. This causes a series of key exchanges among Kramer, Elaine, and George. Realizing that he has broken the covenant of the keys, gives Kramer the realization he is now free to come out of the shadows. Jerry gave his spare keys to Elaine. Then, when he needs them, he goes with George, who has keys to Elaine, to search for a spare set. When they find an Elaine showbiz project, Kramer takes off for California to follow his acting dream and lands a job on Murphy Brown. If anybody didn't know, Murphy Brown, starring Candice Bergen, was a show at the time about what was she, a news reporter? I think she
I
was.
thought it was something like that.
Yeah,
I
and
don't know exactly. Yeah.
the show always had a running gag of her having a different assistant. And so
Yeah.
Kramer, Michael Richards, ended up playing the assistant not only in the Murphy Brown show, but also in Seinfeld as Kramer. And that's all stemming because George and Jerry actually found Elaine's manuscript, which was an episode she was writing for Murphy Brown.
Yeah.
Another one of those things that kind of came into effect. Going to season 4, and I already remember the first episode, which is actually the first 2 episodes, which is the trip because Kramer goes out to California. Jerry's scheduled to appear on Jay Leno, and he agrees to take George with him, and they try to find Kramer there. That is when the serial killer's on the loose, and then Kramer ends up becoming a suspect. I think he's even arrested.
Yeah.
And then in the second episode, he's been incarcerated due to the case of mistaken identity, and George and Jerry bail him out. In the process, they inadvertently allowed the real serial killer to escape from the back of a police car, and then they convinced Kramer to return to New York. So, and this is where stuff starts getting good. This whole season is based on the next episode, which is The Pitch, which is when the NBC executives approached Jerry about creating a television show. And then, so now George suggests that he and Jerry develop a show about nothing. This episode is also where you're introduced to Crazy Joe Davola, which is me for this podcast. And while this is all going on, Elaine is in Europe with her shrink. And Jerry throws out a watch his parents gave him, then meets his Uncle Leo. Uncle Leo ends up finding that watch in the trash. And then Jerry tries to buy it back from it. Just all kinds of cahoots that happen. As I'm reading these, like you were
Crazy.
talking about before, there's a lot in one episode sometime, and you're just like, wow, I didn't realize
Yeah,
that
there's
was
so
all
much.
in the same episode. I feel like if I keep reading every single episode, we're going to be here forever. So I'm going to go a little bit faster on this.
I think you're right. Can I just pick out? Did you already? What's the one? Because there's one that I remembered is really one of my favorites, and I don't know if you've glossed over it yet or not, but it might still be coming. It's the pop can, the bottle
Oh, the
return,
bottle deposit.
bottle deposit. Did you already mention
I
that,
had
or
not.
I forgot what season that's in? I want to say it might be coming up soon though. I
I
want to say
think
it's
it's
somewhere in the
in 4. So
middle.
the rest of this season, this is 4 actually. I think it might be in 5. So the rest of the season is basically Jerry and George trying to get their pilot lit, green lit. There's
Yeah.
Russell Dalrymple, is that his name? He's the NBC executive. He falls in love with Elaine, and then Elaine rejects him. This is all based off because George and Jerry go to his apartment to talk to him about it, and they meet his daughter, who was played by Denise Richards, and she bends over and they look, or George looks, and he
Did you
catches
get a
her.
good
Yeah,
look,
he catches her
Costanza?
looking him. And then so they make Elaine get a low cut shirt and do the same thing to him to try to
Yeah.
prove that it's just natural that guys look.
And it works, doesn't it?
It
Kind of
does
work
work,
though,
yes.
right? Yeah.
But then he becomes infatuated with Elaine. Elaine doesn't like him like that, and then he ends up
Yeah.
disappearing. And then they bring in the people to cast the show. Jerry finds himself enamored with the character that plays Elaine. Then Kramer has an issue with the guy that plays Kramer. And the guy who plays George, by the way, am I not going to remember his name? Oh, Jeremy Piven is the guy who plays George in that show. Another guy who's gotten pretty well famous since then. Yeah, and then so Russell ends up leaving because Elaine won't be with him. And then the new person, they show the first episode of the show that they made, and then the new person that takes over NBC actually cancels the show like right after it's aired. Season 5, some great episodes in here. The Mango, I believe that's the one where Kramer, can he not? Oh, no, Elaine admits that she had faked orgasms, and so Jerry like keeps trying to get her to like sleep with him again. Then there's the puffy shirt, which was from the Low Talker, which I don't think we talked about. In the go ahead.
Is the mango? I'm getting this image in my head of George eating this mango, and then it tastes so good that he stops and he goes, "I think it moved," or something like that.
Oh, I think he might have been, yeah. Because
he was having
there's a later
issues.
on episode where he's mixing food with sex because it's always been like his fetish, right? Like to have food in bed.
Yeah, but is that not the mango episode?
I don't know
What
if
is
it
the
is, but it
description?
sounds like it. So I don't know. I'm not 100% sure because I was also trying to remember there was one where, and I don't think it's this one either, where Kramer loses his taste buds. But I think that's when he's trying to
that's
get
a peach.
Yeah, that's when he's trying to get the Mackinac peaches.
Yeah, Mackinac peaches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the one. That one specifically, he actually gets banished from the fruit store, and then I remember Jerry has to go in and get his fruit, and then the guy recognizes him getting like the same fruit as Kramer, and so he gets kicked out there.
Yeah.
There's an episode about glasses where I remember Jerry wearing some funny glasses. There's the bris, or do you call it? Is it the bris? Is it a bris or is it a brie? I think it's a bris, right? Where they do the
I'm not sure.
that's the circumcising of a child. I guess that's what they call it in the Jewish community.
The chopping.
Yeah.
Yeah. The de-turtlenecking. Yeah.
The Lip Reader with Marley Matlin, the famous Marley Matlin.
That's a great one.
That's where Kramer also becomes a ball boy, a ball man.
Yeah.
At the U.S.
Well,
Open.
you're right. We're going to be here all night, aren't we?
Right. I'm trying to
There's
go through
so
these
many good episodes.
Yeah, there is so many good
I know,
ones.
and I'm slowing you down too
No, it's
because
all
you'll
right.
say
It's
one
all
and I'll
right.
be like,
we have the non-fat yogurt. I believe that Giuliani makes an appearance in that right after he becomes mayor of New York. We have the barber, where Jerry cheats on his barber with his barber's cousin, and then his barber finds out, and he has all these like nightmares about it. There's the masseuse, where Jerry dates the masseuse who was also, I can't remember her name in real life, but she's doing commercials now. But she was Stifler's mom in America's Pie, America's Pie, American Pie.
Oh yeah.
Actually, I don't think she was. I think somebody else. There was another girl in there though. I can't remember her, but I know she
Yeah.
was in an episode. And then so yeah, so there's that. There's a cigar store Indian. There's the conversion when George converts to Latvian Orthodox. Kramer unwittingly entrances a Latvian nun in training who wants to leave the church to be with him. I think they call it something that he has. He's like, I got the kaviska or something. I don't know what it is. There's the stall, which we were just talking about, where Elaine is the toilet paper is stolen from the other girl. This is also the one where they have actually they didn't mention that in the vocabulary, but the mimbo, the male bimbo, where George really likes this guy and they go out and he's like talking about making sandwiches for when they go rock climbing, and then the dude falls and hurts his face.
Yeah, is that when George? That's when George starts referring to himself in the third person.
Yeah.
George is getting upset.
George is getting upset. Yeah, and then he kind of does that a little bit later on too in a few episodes.
Yeah, and he made sandwiches, but he messed up and caused the guy to fall. Yeah, you were just mentioning that, and the guy hurt his face. Elaine was worried that his face was going to be ruined because
Yeah.
he's all
His
bandaged
name was
up.
Tony, and Jerry kept being like Tony. Like it
Yeah.
was cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all in that one episode with the Can You Spare a Square. And then we have the dinner party.
Was that
Go ahead.
real quickly? Just I know we're trying to go fast, and now I'm slowing down. But is that the one where George is referring to himself, or am I thinking of? Did I cross that with a different one? Because now I'm thinking of one where there was a basketball guy who also referred to himself in third person, where he's like, he was like, Tommy's going up, Tommy's doing a three,
Yeah, that
Tommy's
guy.
down.
I don't know if
What
it
was
was
the guy's
this
name
one.
though?
I remember that one because yeah, he was saying, they were making fun of him for referring to himself that way.
Yeah, I forgot what the guy's name was. It was something like Tommy, but I don't know if that was it.
Yeah, I do remember
But
that he got the special shoes, and then that can make him jump like really high or whatever. And
yeah. Oh man, you just reminded me of one of my favorite ones too. Sorry, you finished.
no, I was just gonna say that Kramer gets those shoes, and he also gets like what, punched in the mouth or something like
That's
that.
what it is. Yeah. But and he meets somebody, and this happened several times. And at the very end, I think what happened was either he got punched in the mouth, but there was one of the times where he had to go see the dentist as well.
Yeah.
And the dentist numbed his mouth too. And they thought he was a special kind of a
Yeah,
person
and he gets up there
with
and
yeah.
yeah,
When
great.
you're smiling.
Yeah, great episode. Other episodes here are the pie. That's the one where Jerry can't believe his girlfriend will share a piece of pie with him. And then this is also the one with the mannequin that looks like Elaine. So this is the one where Kramer has an itch and then has to end it with that girl because he doesn't have the itch anymore. There's the stand-in. Kramer talks his stand-in friend, one of the little people, in getting lifts to keep his job. Yeah, I remember that one. George and his latest girlfriend have nothing to say to each other. He wants to break up, but won't when he finds out she's being urged to break it off. So he wants to break up with her, but then when she wants to break up with him, it becomes a different thing. And then there's the wife with Courtney Cox, where she uses the whole wife, even though they're not married,
Yep.
to get a dry cleaning discount. And then there's a whole fiasco with that. George uses the shower at the health club where he pees, and then
It's all pipes and drains.
Yeah, and then and then Elaine's getting mixed signals. There's the raincoats when George's they're trying to go into business together between Jerry's parents and George's parents, and they're trying to sell raincoats. There's the fire where George pushes everybody out of the way when he thinks there's a fire, and he pushes like the old person. It's like a kid's birthday party. The clown is played by Jon Favreau.
Jon Favreau,
Yeah, and then there's the Hamptons, which is where George gets upset when he hasn't seen his date topless at the beach, but Jerry and Kramer do. That's also the one with the shrinkage, and that's so
Yeah.
so Jerry's trying to see George is trying to see Jerry's girlfriend naked because Jerry has seen George's girlfriend naked, and then Jerry's girlfriend walks in on George, and that's when he's like, I was in the pool, and then he's worried that he's gonna tell or she's gonna tell his girlfriend. Um there's also an episode that I bypass here because I want to talk about a little bit more, the marine biologist, where George pretends to be a marine biologist. And
Classic.
and Kramer is hitting golf balls into the sea. This has got a great monologue at the end about what was wrong with a whale when George is with his girlfriend and they have like a whale that's beached or something. And there's like, is anybody a marine biologist? And lo and behold, uh, George has to do something about it. And I heard that they had a different ending for that show. And then Larry David went off and wrote that monologue that George says at the end where he finds the golf ball that was plugging the hole of, and they said that Jason Alexander literally learned that whole monologue in like 45 minutes and they did it the same night. And it's just one of those crazy stories where yeah, it was great. And then the final episode of this season is the opposite. Where this is where George gets a job with the Yankees because he does everything opposite. He goes to, that girl at the coffee shop, and says,
Yeah.
I'm unemployed. I live with my mother. And then she's like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah. And I love even right before them when he's like, I'll have rye untoasted.
yeah, because he's trying to do
I
the
forgot what this whole
opposite.
order was.
Yeah. And then,
Yeah.
and then
And then
Elaine has bad luck, right? And then
yeah. And
Jerry's
that's
like, oh, you've become George. And then
yeah.
Kramer also appears on Regis and Kathy Lee to promote his coffee table book.
And then
So
and
much fun.
Jerry's also yeah, and I love that. Jerry's also I remember that he had a whole thing about always breaking even
Yes.
on that episode as
Yes,
well.
like where
Yeah.
he would always break even. So it was kind of like one of those things where he's like, well, first Elaine was up there and you were down there and I was even, and now you're up there and Elaine's down there and I'm even. And doesn't he even like give somebody like $5 or $10 and then somehow like somebody gives him like that money back later and he's like, look, I broke
Yeah,
even.
or he just like finds one in his pocket or like
Oh
he'll
yeah, I
pull out
think
and be
that's
like,
what it was. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Season 6, a lot of good stuff in season 6. We have the
Man.
big salad, the chaperone, the pledge drive, the Chinese woman, the couch, the gymnast, the soup, the mom and pop store, the secretary, the race, the switch, the label maker, the scofflaw, the beard, the kiss hello, the doorman, the Jimmy. Jimmy was his name. The guy
Jimmy.
who referred to himself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the doodle, the Fusilli Jerry, which is the one where Kramer gets the ass man plates. George's dad gets into a fight with, was it Kramer? Over the
Because he
move.
stopped
Yeah,
short.
because
Yeah.
he stopped short with Kramer stopped
Yeah.
short with Estelle, and then they kind of get into a little argument, and George's dad falls back onto the Fusilli Jerry and has to go see a proctologist, and then that's when Kramer realizes that the ass man plates that he got are actually the proctologist because he has a picture on his wall of a boat that says the ass man. And then there's the Diplomats Club, the face painter with Putty. I think this is the first one where you get to see Putty, where he's dressing up like a New Jersey devil. And then the understudy. Um, and that's one involves Bette Midler. Just so many great episodes. Are there any other ones that
Man.
stand out to you there?
I don't know. How many seasons total we got? It's isn't it?
9.
It's
We probably should
9.
have made this a two-parter. We could
Man,
have.
you can. I don't know. I almost feel like you can just keep going because
Yeah.
they're all good. Every single one is good.
And I know, and now you get to, and now I'm sure you're seeing where it's like it'd be impossible. It'd even be impossible to rank
Yeah.
all the episodes. I feel
Well,
like.
if we have time, I have something that I thought would be fun to do with you
Okay.
that will solve that question.
All right. So season 7 is the one with this whole season. We have Susan. This is the engagement where Jerry and George reevaluate their relationships with women, so they make a pact. And then, of course, George gets back with Susan and then asks him to marry or ask her to marry him. And then there's the postponement, the maestro, the wink, the hot tub. I remember Kramer gets a hot tub and keeps blowing the fuses. There's a marathon runner in town that Jerry wants to make sure he gets to the marathon on time, and then obviously Kramer's hot tub blows the fuses in the whole apartment, and he doesn't wake up to the alarm clock. The Soup Nazi is this season. The Secret Code, the Pool Guy, the Sponge, the Gum, the Rye, the Caddy, the Seven, the Cadillac, the Showerhead, Low Flow. Don't like the sound of Low Flow. The Doll, where Susan has a doll that looks just like George's mom. And I remember at the very end of that episode, George's dad comes in for some reason to that apartment, sees Susan holding it, and he like envisions the doll talking to him, like yelling at him, and then he rips the head off. And then George just looks at Susan, is like, "I told you it looked like her," because she didn't believe it. And then there's the Friars Club, the Wig Master, the Calzone, um, the Bottle Deposit. Here it is. It's all the way in season 7.
Wow. Yeah.
And that's also where I'm thinking Jerry gets his car stolen, right? Yeah. And then they're following it for a little bit.
Yeah.
It's also they go to an old farmer, um, and like they warn Newman to stay away from the farmer's daughter.
Yeah.
Then
That's a great Newman episode, though.
it's a
the
really
Bottle
good
Deposit
Newman
one.
episode, yeah. And then there's the Wait Out, and then of course the invitations, which George picks the cheapest invitations. Susan has to lick them all, and then she ends up dying from this old poisonous adhesive glue. And then they all get coffee at the end of the episode because that makes
Yeah.
that makes George happy. Season 8, we're getting into the real good ones now. The Foundation, The Soulmate, The Bizarro Jerry, which is by far one of my favorite episodes, where
Very
Elaine
good.
dates somebody who's the opposite of Jerry, and then she finds out that he's got all these friends that are the exact opposite of George and Kramer. The Little Kicks is the one we were just talking about. Sweet Fancy Moses. That's the one where Elaine dances. That's the one where George is a bad boy. That's the one where Jerry is bootlegging a movie, and then George does it later. Then there's The Package. This is the one where Elaine is difficult. And it's also where Uncle Leo gets his eyebrows come on, like get blown off from an explosion on his stove, and Jerry thinks it's the package that does it. I remember a part where Elaine goes in to see Uncle Leo where he's at the doctor, and she just draws on his eyebrows. And then when the doctor comes back, because of the way she drew him on, he looks
He's
upset,
mad.
and so they mark him in
Yeah.
there as being difficult.
Yeah.
So many great episodes. The Fatigues, the Checks, the Chicken Roaster, another one of my favorite episodes where the chicken roaster sign comes up and Jerry and Kramer switch apartments because the light shines directly into Kramer's apartment. And then he starts eating the chicken because Newman's bringing it to him, and he's trying to, but he wants Jerry to stay living in his apartment. There's that fun scene where Jerry kind of becomes Kramer for a minute, and then Kramer kind of becomes Jerry. And it's
Yeah.
really great. Remember one of the characters that's never seen Bob Sacamano that that Jerry talks to, but it's really Kramer's friend. The Abstinence, where George gets smarter because he's not having sex.
Yeah. That's a good one.
The Andrea Doria, where Elaine is dating a guy who has been stabbed, so she wants to know why he keeps having like getting stabbed, and finds out that or that he's a bad breaker upper, and he just says mean things. And that's of course the one where George is trying to get that cheap apartment, and there's an Andrea Doria survivor, a ship that sunk, and George learns that wasn't very many people that died, so he feels like that his stories are much worse. So he says all his stories. He ends up getting an apartment, but then at the very end, the guy who was dating Elaine for a moment gets the apartment. Um, and George is like, "Is it because you were stabbed, or because I think Elaine threw coffee on him, or you were burnt?" And he's like, "No, I just paid the super, like, I don't know, $20 or $50 or something like that." And he gets the apartment that way. There's the little Jerry with the little rooster, that is used in cockfighting, called Little Jerry. Um, that's also the one where George dates a girl, a convict, and then she ends up escaping. And then that's also one where Elaine has a boyfriend that realizes that he's balding, and he actually gets in trouble for George's, like, when George's girlfriend escapes and uh comes to his apartment. Then there's the money where I think yeah, Jerry's parents sell the Cadillac. And this is also the one on where oh yeah, George anticipates a big inheritance, and then his parents are thinking about moving to Florida, and they make it sound like they're giving him the opportunity to say, "Hey, should we move to Florida and spend our money, or should we stay here and sit on it all so you can have it?" Even though they end up moving to Florida anyways. Then there's the
Del Boca Del
Del Boca Vista. This is
Yeah.
Frank Costanza, and you cannot keep us out of Del Boca Vista. And he had such a hard time saying that. Then there's the comeback. Um, oh, that's the one where George gets, they call him, George is eating a bunch of shrimp. And the guy said, "Hey, the shrimp store called. They're running out of shrimp."
Oh, yeah.
And then George thinks of a comeback and he wants to go like later on, and he goes all the way back. That never,
And would you remember what it was?
the comeback, the jerk
Yeah.
store called, and they're running out of you. And then the
And then he
guy's
goes-
like, then when he finally gets to use it, the guy's like, "Well, you're their best seller," or something like that.
Yeah.
And then that's
yeah,
when,
you're their all-time bestseller.
yeah, and then that's when George says to him, because Kramer told him, "Just say that you slept with his wife," and he says that, and then I think his wife actually ends up being in a coma. Um, so it didn't work out. The Van Buren Boys, which we are calling ourselves today, we are the Van Buren Boys. That is a group that George has to, he interviews a candidate for the foundation that was made in Susan's name, and he actually ends up not giving it to one of the Van Buren boys, and then he's trying to learn what the sign is. I think this is, if I remember right, let me read here a minute. This is the same one, yep, that Kramer sells his stories to Peterman, and Kramer can't tell his stories anymore. Then there is the Susie, where there's a girl in Elaine, a coworker of Elaine's, who thinks that she is Susie, and then Elaine just goes with it. And then there's the pothole, where Jerry's girlfriend uses a toothbrush that he had just pulled out of the toilet. And then George shows off his new Phil Rizzuto keyring, and he loses that and realizes that it was covered up in a pothole. Just so much stuff. The English Patient, is that the one where Jerry? Oh no, Jerry was making out during Schindler's List, right? The English Patient was, oh yeah, where Jerry goes to Florida. Or he Kramer asked Jerry to bring back Cubans while Jerry is in Florida, and it ends up being Cubans. Jerry thinks it's cigars, but it's really actual people, Cubans. And then that's also the one where Elaine goes to see the English Patient and hates it, and Peterman,
She can't tell her boss because her boss loves the movie.
right?
And is that the one where she tells him and he's like, "Oh, it basically is like, you're fired,"
Mhm.
at the end of it.
Mhm.
Well, of course you're fired.
Yeah, and then I think she
yeah.
gets back anyway somehow. Then there's the nap. That's another good one where George decides to start napping. Um, this is the one where Jerry has a contractor who like puts up a crazy like wall in his apartment, because the guy kept asking him too many questions, and Jerry just said, "Do what you want." And then George also has that same guy make him like a little napping room under his desk at his work at the Yankee Stadium. That's when Steinbrenner visits
Yeah.
with the kids, and George is stuck underneath the desk, and he calls Jerry to call in a fake bomb threat so he can get out of there.
Yeah.
Just so many good
Yeah.
episodes. The yada
Oh my
yada
gosh.
yada, which is, where George enjoys his girlfriend's use of the phrase yada 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 until she uses it in which she realizes that she slept with her ex-boyfriend. And then this is also the one where Jerry thinks that Tim Watley converted just for the Jewish jokes. Then we have the Millennium, where uh, this is where Kramer's going to have a Millennium party, but then Newman's also going to have one, and so they join together. And then this is the one where Jerry is dating a girl who his status in the relationship is based on her speed dial, where he makes it to number one and he tries to stay there, but then her stepmother tries to, like, was talking about how she got number one. And then I think he ends up in as 911, because I think or poison control. He ends up being
Oh,
poison control because her
yeah.
stepmother eats some chips. This all goes to, there's so much in this episode, but yeah, there's a lot of that. And then the muffin tops, which was kind of a referral to the fake sponsor today of the top of the muffin to you, and this is also the one where they have the Peterman reality tours, where Kramer does a Peterman reality tour in a bus. And this is also the one where Jerry shaves his chest hair and then it starts growing back crazy thick afterwards. By the way, the real Kramer did based on this episode. I don't know if it was based on this episode or if it was the other way around. Did a real Kramer tour where he was talking about being the real Kramer. So it's just,
I remember seeing clips of
yeah,
that
it's
before
art
with him doing
imitating
that.
life
Yeah.
again and life imitating art. It's great.
Yeah.
And then the summer of George, where George gets a severance package from the Yankees that lasts 3 months, so he wants to take the summer off. This is also where Jerry dates uh, a girl that has a man living with her, and then when he asks her to get rid of the man, he realizes that he has a lot to, like, that he was actually helping. Um, and then George starts to help him, and then George slips, and he's, he was supposed to not be able to walk, but then he ends up walking again. This is also Raquel Welch. She doesn't move with her arms. And then Elaine also has that issue with a lady who doesn't move her arms when she walks, played by Molly Shannon um, in that episode. Let's get to season 9, the final one.
Okay.
And season 9, oh, I guarantee you that every episode I'm going to say I'm going to love in season 9. The butter shave, where Kramer
Great.
uses butter to shave and then ends up um, on the roof for too long sunbathing with butter for some reason. And then, Newman has a problem with him. And then this is where Elaine and David Putty keep fighting on their trip to Europe. Vegetable lasagna is there, if you remember that character. And then there's The Voice, where Jerry keeps doing a voice with the girl's belly button.
How does the voice go?
Hello, that voice. And then this is
Yeah.
also where Kramer has an intern. And I love this episode because, like, the intern has to do everything for him.
Yeah. What about a bladder system?
Yeah, where they're
They're
testing
doing
that
that. Yeah.
out. And then there's the Serenity Now, where we talked about it. Serenity Now, Insanity Later. George is helping his father sell computers. This is also the one where he gives Kramer his parents' old screen door, and Kramer, like, uses it at the apartments, and then he keeps getting the kids keep messing with him and stuff like that. It's also where Jerry gets in touch with his feelings, and that was um, Aunt Rebecca from Full House that played his girlfriend in that movie, or in that, sorry, in that show. And then we have The Blood. Um, this is the one where Jerry gets some Kramer blood because he has an issue. Um, and yeah, and then this is the one where George starts eating food during sex. Yeah, this so much great
Okay.
stuff. This is the one that has Izzy Mandenbaum, who is played by um who's the Lloyd Bridges. There you go. Just a couple years before he died, the father of Jeff um Bridges. And then we have the junk mail. This is with a famous cameo from Wilford Brimley as the postmaster general when Kramer's trying to like get rid of his mail, and Newman tries to help him, gets in trouble. Also, this is the one where George his parents cut him loose, and then he plans to date his cousin to try to get him back. So there's that van that one friend of Jerry's gives him for performing. There's the Merv Griffin show, also one of my favorite ones,
That's a great
where
one. That's a great one.
Kramer finds the old Merv Griffin set in a dumpster and puts it in his apartment. And then every time somebody comes in, it's really probably one of the very few times, even though it wouldn't be what his apartment would look like naturally, it's one of the very few times that you get to see Kramer's apartment for a lot of the show. But yeah, and then that's when Jerry is drugging his girlfriend to play with her toys because she won't let anybody play with those toys. And then you have the slicer. Jeez, man, just so many good things. This also, this is where George realizes that he had a run-in with his new boss back in the day, and he's in a picture, where where he does something, and he has to get himself erased out of the picture, and so there's a whole fiasco with that. Then we have the betrayal, which was, I believe, that was the backwards episode, right, where everything was in reverse order. Um, you can stuff your sorries in a sack is another good line from that episode. Then you have the apology with one of George's friends or people they know going through the steps of the Alcohol Anonymous 13 steps. And when they get on to step 9, they're trying to say their amends. And George is hoping that this dude says his amends to him.
Because he's stretched his this neck out on his
Yeah, his
sweater.
turtleneck, I think it was.
Yeah.
Just and then there's the one where this is also where Elaine is offended when her coworker Peggy.
James Spader.
Yes, James Spader.
Is that James Spader?
That was the one guy. I'm glad you said it because I knew who it was. I just couldn't think of his name right now. Yeah, and then and then this is where Jerry and his girlfriend are always naked. And Elaine is offended when her coworker can't tolerate her germs. So there's all that going on. And then the strike, which is the one with the Festivus. We talked about this one pretty heavily already. So much went on in that episode. Then there's the dealership. This is, I think, one of your favorite episodes where Putty is Jerry's trying to get a deal with Putty at the dealership for a car. He's high-fiving everybody. And then Elaine breaks up with him, and then he tries to add all these extra fees onto the car. And then Jerry gets them back in together. And this is also when George is trying to find out who stole his Twix bar, and Kramer goes with the salesman on a ride to see how long they can go until the car runs out of gas. There's the reverse peephole, just so much good stuff. This is the one where we're talking about the European carry-on. Then there's the cartoon. Geez, man. This is where Susan's old college roommate gets all this information. She writes a tell-all book about Jerry because Jerry gets mad. And he keeps leaving messages on her machine, and she keeps using it in her one-woman show. There's the strong box, which is the one where I believe Jerry has a strong box that Kramer has, and Kramer has a strong box, hides the key in a different neighboring apartment where in their bird food, and that bird dies. Just so many great things. The wizard, where Kramer goes and retires down in the community of where Jerry's parents are, and then he runs for what is it even called? Like I don't know, the Del Boca Vista. He's running. Oh, the condo board president. That's what it is. And
Condo
then
board
yeah,
president.
it's oh god. And then there's the burning. That's the one where Elaine thinks Putty is religious, and then he kind of proves that he is. And then Kramer and his little friend Mickey get in an acting gig, playing sick for some medical students. So that's when Kramer has gonorrhea, and he has to act like he has gonorrhea. And then they keep typecasting him because he did it so well that they keep giving him.
Because he has a what's it called when you have not a hemorrhoid? What's the word for what he actually had? He had a medical condition, not in real life, but in real life in the show. He had something that allowed him to act really.
Oh yeah, what did he?
It's not a. It's like an H word. Not a hernia. He had a hernia,
Oh,
didn't he?
well, I don't know. It just says that Kramer picks up the showmanship idea and really plays up his gonorrhea part. So I don't know.
Oh, I thought there was some. I thought there
It
was
does
some
sound
scene though where
familiar,
he had a
though.
hernia,
Yeah.
and he was like, as long as I. Oh, you know what?
Are you thinking of Friends?
Yeah, I'm thinking of
Matt
Friends.
LeBlanc?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you knew exactly what I was talking about, and you're like,
Yeah.
man, it's funny to mix up because he had to play a patient,
Yeah. And he did it
and
so
Kramer had to
well.
play a patient,
Yeah.
and he did it so well because he had a hernia.
Right.
Yeah. Forget I said that. Cut
Here's
that
the
out. Keep
one
going.
where Jerry catches his Uncle Leo stealing in the bookstore. This is also the one where George takes a book into the bathroom and it becomes flagged and he has to buy it.
Yeah. And they need to make an example out of somebody, and they're doing it out of Uncle Leo. So then when George goes to do it, Jerry goes swarm,
Yeah.
and then
they all swarm to him because
Yeah.
at the end George is gonna steal a book to make it even because he had to pay for that book.
Yeah.
And
then he's gonna return it.
Yeah, and then there's the whole thing about Jerry calling his parents saying that Uncle Leo stole, and they were talking about how all old people steal, and he's like, "You guys are stealing too," and he's like, "What are you stealing?" He's like, "Mainly batteries and stuff like that." Then there's the Frogger,
which is true. It's
yeah.
Well, I was to say batteries. It's a true theft, isn't it? Really high,
Right, right.
especially for
They're expensive,
older
man.
people.
They're expensive.
Maybe for everybody.
Then you have the Frogger, which Jerry and George's old high school pizza place is shutting down, and George realizes that he still has the high score on the Frogger machine, so decides to buy it, and has all these people enlisted to help him to get it to where he needs him to go. But then they all fuck up, and he ends up playing Frogger at the end in real life to get this machine across the road, but then it gets taken out.
Yeah.
This is also the one with what was that? There was a serial killer around because Jerry is trying to break up with his girlfriend and he takes all day, and then he realizes night out when he has to leave. Was it called the Whopper? I forgot what he was called, the serial killer.
Well, I forgot.
But so that's kind of that part of that too. Also, this is the same one where Peterman had an old piece of cake, and Elaine kept getting used to eating sweet stuff when everybody had like a cake at her work, but then she kind of got mad at it, and then she realized that she kind of counted on that sweet that sweet tasting stuff that she had every day, and then she eats an old piece of cake out of Peterman's, and then tries to replace it with an Entenmann's. The maid, where Jerry has a maid, and then eventually he's wondering what he's paying for because he ends up sleeping with the maid, but then she doesn't do anything, and so Kramer's like, "Wait, what are you paying for?" And then this is also where George tries to get his nickname to be T-Bone, but it ends up being what? Brandon, what does his new boss call him instead of T-Bone?
Hold on. T-Bone. He says, "How about what is it, like Shrimpo?" I forgot. What is it?
It's Coco the monkey.
Coco the monkey.
George is he's arguing with the guy outside of the conference room.
Oh, yeah,
and
and all I can see is him doing this.
He's making all these like gestures that make him look like, and then his boss is like, "Yeah, doesn't George look like that monkey?" So he calls him Coco the monkey. Then finally we have the Puerto Rican Day parade, where we talked a little bit about the different aliases that Kramer, George, and Jerry used. And then we have the finale, which we can talk about a little bit if you want, now that we're finally kind of through this. The finale, I think, was very heavily criticized back in the day. I think looking back at it now, because even I criticized it, but looking back at it now, I don't really know if they could have did a different job, or if they could have done a better job. Like, what do you feel about the finale?
Yeah, I think they could have. I think they could have did. They could have done something maybe a little bit better. I remember seeing something of it was an episode that they kind of did. There was a show that came out, I think maybe on the Larry David show, where in the show they were doing another episode
Yeah,
of Seinfeld, or like a reunion
yeah, they did it
show.
on a Curb
So
Your
is that
Enthusiasm. Yeah,
yeah, curb your enthusiasm. So instead of doing a reunion for real, they did a simulated reunion within the show, and it still kind of counted, even though it didn't count, but they kind of said it counted. But when they were all talking, there's this moment I remember where Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld, I don't know if anybody else was there, but they were talking about how it should have ended. And then they were they were in agreement. They were like, "Oh yeah, this is how it should have ended." Um, and what's funny is I don't remember what they said, but I remember thinking that they were right, that that is how it should have ended. So based on that, I'm going to say they could have done a better job, but I can't remember what the real
well,
ending was. I think it would have been yeah.
you're in 2010. They brought the Seinfeld actors back on Curb Your Enthusiasm to do like a redo of whatever. And what you're
Yeah.
referring to, where they said this is how they should have done it, was actually the very last episode of Curb, which I think was what, last year, or the year before. Jerry and Larry end up becoming, they go to jail, but then they do get out somehow. And I think that was where people were, a lot of people were upset by the ending because they made the show about something, right? Like that show was definitely about something, and it kind of went away from
Yeah.
things. But I think we had talked about this before. It was a good way because Larry David wanted to get all those characters back in the courtroom to talk about all these things that had happened throughout the 9 seasons. And
Yeah.
so I get why they wanted to do
I
that.
agree,
But
yeah.
yeah.
I'm seeing here that says that in the Curb Your Enthusiasm series finale, Larry David was sentenced to prison, but Jerry Seinfeld appeared to reveal that a mistrial had been declared due to a juror breaking the sequestration rules,
Yeah,
freeing
okay, yeah,
Larry.
he didn't stay sequestered like he was supposed to. Um, and then
Yeah,
that's when they
and then
said
Larry went
this is
free,
how we should have ended it because
and that's how Seinfeld should have ended. They all went to jail, and then it turns out somebody
right, because I
broke
think there was a lot of people
yeah,
upset that they were all going to be in jail for a year, even though the show was over. But
yeah,
it was kind of interesting.
yeah. I think it would have been great for them to be let out at the
I
very
say
end.
let's go ahead and do. You said that you had something that you wanted to.
I think it's gonna take.
Oh, if
I
it's
don't know
going
if
to
we have
take
enough
too
time
long,
for it.
we won't worry about it. Because we have been talking for a while. Um,
I think this could be a fun segment in maybe just even another episode, because Seinfeld is great to sprinkle
well,
in.
yeah, I think.
It's kind of like mental health, right? Seinfeld and mental health are
Well,
great
yeah,
sprinkles
well,
to put on
Seinfeld is
top of
great for
any.
mental health. I'll tell you what, anything that can make you laugh
Yeah,
is definitely great.
yep, and it always does. Yeah, so let me put a pin in this, and I'll tell you about it later. Well, let me give you a little preview,
Okay.
actually. So it's a bracket. It's a head-to-head bracket game where you're
Oh,
constantly
okay,
you're given 2 episodes,
okay,
and what will happen is we'll end up it will force you to have to pick your favorite episode because of the nature of how the brackets work.
okay,
So
okay. That's
so
actually
let's
a
put a
good
pin
way
in
to
that.
pick out yeah. So I understand what you were saying before now. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, I like that, and that'll come in handy. Is that something that's specific to Seinfeld, or you can do anything with it?
I think you can do anything
Okay,
with this.
because I think
This
in
could
the
be a
future,
fun format and game.
yeah, I was going
Yeah,
to say in
for
the
sure.
future we're also, I think, going to do a Game of Thrones episode of our pod, and so that'll be good to throw
Yeah.
that in there. Which I'm assuming it'll be just mainly the first 5 seasons of the Game of
Yeah.
Thrones winning beyond. I think that there's so many people.
So yeah, I agree. I also, and not to get too meta, but I would also like to do, what are they called when you tier lists? I'd like to do some tier lists
Yeah,
with you too.
yeah, like the tier maker.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking about that
Yeah.
too, but that would decide that's more of a choice on our end. I do like I will
Yeah.
still do it, but I do like your idea about putting them in a bracket and that way you're
Yeah.
forced to choose and
Well,
that
like I
works out.
think episodes are great for brackets, but if we were doing like Game of Thrones, like even if we were doing Seinfeld, but like characters,
Yeah.
I think characters on a tier list could work, whereas episodes on a bracket makes more sense because you can't really choose like 1 out of 100 which one's the best. But
Yeah,
um,
Seinfeld is an absolute wonderful show. It got so much bigger. I'm so glad that it's out there on streaming. I'm so glad that so many more people um, have been able to enjoy it and watch it. And it's become even popular amongst the younger generation again, just like Friends. But it's such a great show, and the cultural impact of it is still going on. And I will say that Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld are I would consider them comedic geniuses. Um, Jerry Seinfeld did that for a few years on his own after Larry David left. Um, I think after season 5 or season 6, Larry David left. Um, and then Larry David came back to help with the finale. But then you have what 20 years of Curb Your Enthusiasm, not 20 seasons, but during a 20-year span, he does I think like 12 or 13 seasons, and just another great, phenomenal show. Larry David is really good at what he does. Jerry Seinfeld is really good at what he does, and I think it was just the right time. The characters were great. I mean, do you have any other
yeah.
final thoughts on Seinfeld and just like anything you want to share?
I just want to going through this and listing off all the episodes and remembering each one. It just reaffirms in my mind that it really was the greatest sitcom